I hope you are hanging in there well. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Ernest, for setting up the stories and making my and other guys' life a bit easier. So Diana kindly asked today to talk about mainly three things. Just to start, how do we start it off? Then speak about the challenges we endured and which were the biggest ones, and then finish up with what I would do different if we would have to do the same thing over again, or with today's knowledge, what I could go. So I will try to skip to that, try to hold myself to that kind of flow of the story. So first of all, a bit about Giraffe360. So we are a robotics technology company. In a simple words, we have built this beautiful camera that you can put in the room, press one button, and it does a full accurate rooms 3D scan. So we don't sell hardware, but we are a subscription company. We give the cameras as a subscription. We currently operate in 18 countries across Europe. We are staff of 50. So we are like some late seed Series A stage business. As of today, we have raised like 2 million euros as of venture funding in a previous two pre-seed and the seed round. So we are now getting closer to probably Series A. So that's about Giraffe360. A bit about the organization and operations. We think one unique thing we've been doing since day one, we have been set up internationally. So our R&D, the initial engineering for the hardware is done in Riga. Now it's in Old Riga's office. Then we do processing from Liepaja. We have probably the biggest by people count, the biggest team in Liepaja, and we do sales and all the customer communication from London. So as we started, I think we started to work in 3 offices when we were 7-8 people. So now going to 50 people, we've like, it has had a probably more unique approach to building and structuring the team and focusing on the strength for each location to build out the organization. So that's an initial about the Giraffe360. How we started off is actually back in 2010. I started my service company. It's called Startin.LV. We did virtual tours. Over the next 5-6 years, we became one of the leading virtual tour and other interactive technology suppliers in a Baltic market, started to operate internationally. And I started my first company when I was 20, like day before my 21st birthday. So at around 5-6 years later, I kind of had a better understanding what does it mean to have a company, to run a company. And so we started to think about different kind of more product-led solutions that would enable a global scale. So Giraffe360 came around 2016. We officially founded the company September 2016. So I'm been playing the startup game since that. So it's a good last couple of years. And Giraffe360 is more as a spin-off. To some extent is a spin-off from my first service company. So I've been around interactive technology visuals for the last 10 years, even though I feel really young and the company is like a young startup, but sometimes I feel I haven't been doing anything in my life as long as I've been working with virtual tours and other visuals. So about the challenges, we build hardware. So that initial R&D, that initial development is probably our biggest milestone and the challenge to overcome, like to build actual hardware, develop it, build the it's a big cycle. And what Ernest said at the beginning, their first estimate for their platform was 100 lats. Like our initial estimate was going to cost us like 2,000 euros to build like a prototype. It ended up being like something like 200,000 euros to build the initial prototype. So we got our math slightly wrong, and then but once it's done, you can go ahead. So we launched our first camera in 2017 January, and last year in May we released our third model, which we feel is like really great for scale, and we believe we have the best product in the world in our in our space. So since that, we've been fighting with the scale. So to build up our own manufacturing facilities, basically to scale the process and then scale the processing for all the files. So in terms of the challenges, we've been more or less for the last couple of years, literally just solving a hardcore technology issues, and it's not too many fancy startup stories that I can talk about. There are lots of mistakes done and around that, but in terms of the challenge, because of our product is so complex, it consists of the camera, file upload system, of the processing, and then all the delivery to the clients, and then it's designed to be extremely simple, so the margin of error is really small. There is like that initial, the whole technology development is super hard. In terms of the other challenges, I would say the second biggest challenge for a startup like ours, especially from the Baltic region, is fundraising as a hardware company. Fundraising is not an easy task for any business, and I feel that there's some additional caveat for a hardware component. So out of 10 investor introductions, 9 just are not interested to go in deep conversations. So we have a slightly smaller scale of companies that we can approach. But at the end of the day, we raised 2 million for the initial seed stage to build up the technology. So I think we did a fairly good job of mitigating those problems and enabling investors to focus on what is the important thing. It's the actual business model and the opportunity we have here, rather than focusing on some sort of a weird KPI that hardware is hard. Yes, it's hard, but nobody's like, what's easy. So, and on the fundraising side, I think the one thing I learned in past 3 years is what I didn't know before, definitely, is that fundraising is a full-time job. And you should be really, if you want to fundraise, you have to be really focused on that. You can't just kind of meet some random people in the bar or like in a random startup event. In our experience, it doesn't happen like that. Maybe because we have a hardware, so we needed to be more active and more diligent in how we communicate, and what are the things that we present and how we present and how systematic we are. But I think it's also general. A more general knowledge. And then the one thing what was really challenging for us at those initial stages was is the running more international business. But I'm really thankful that we did that. I think that's definitely challenge that we don't want to. I want to repeat one more time if I would be put in the same shoes. So we eventually have now 4 or 5, or actually with the manufacturing facility, like 5 different locations for the company, only 50 people. But the downside is everybody's not around one table. You can't just sit down and have a conversation. So you have to be more like everybody now with the corona. Is learning how to communicate differently. Hey, Lauris, he's just joined. So with the Corona thing, everybody is learning to communicate more from home, work remotely, and for us, so now when we are put in this situation where lots of teams are working from home, for me, I actually don't feel any difference, because for the last 4 years we've been running international remote teams that need to deliver results very well without being in the same room, and that's a like operational challenge. How do you communicate? What are the goals, and how to proceed with the daily agenda? And our communication is really important at that stage. So, switching to the third section about what I would do differently if we would have to do this thing over again, is I think the number one, what also Ernest and Robert spoke about to some extent, is MVP. Definitely have a really, really small MVP. I think lots of founders get this thing really wrong in terms of believing that you want to be proud with your product, you want to be proud with your company. So we definitely want it. So instead of just like picking one thing, like a really narrow focus where we want to be the best, we on our end, we decided we have to build the hardware, we have to build processing, we have to build all these user applications, CS, like usually companies only tackle, and all our majority of our competitors tackle those individual aspects as their own startups. So we have decided that no, we're going to take this whole thing, and we miraculously in a couple of months gonna create it, innovate in it, and become better than everyone else in our space. So MVP is a really tricky question, and every year later I learn how much smaller MVP we could have had, and it's really hard to pick and choose that like a really narrow focus. What is your minimum viable product that you want to build, and you're okay to be ashamed of, but you can actually start putting it in the market, start selling it. I think that takes, more than anything else, courage, because to be focused, you have to have some confidence, and there's a connection with being confident and be courageous to really pick something really small and narrow and just double down on it and execute on it, rather than pick up lots of fancy things, lots of ideas that sound great, but then it's really hard to execute, because at the end of the day, nobody cares what's written on a pitch deck and how fancy it sounds on the website. It has to work for that targeted small client group. So MVPs definitely I would want to revisit if I would be doing things one more time. The second thing on MVP side, I think what Robert said about selling is, we did this since day one, and I just would want to double down on it. You have to sell the MVP. There's no value in customers who are giving you feedback that are not paying for the product. And we since they've been doing that, but I think since Robert spoke about it, I think it's really, really important. And we did them, and I think to some extent, good job that we started to sell straight away in London, to build a long-term customer base that gives us the right feedback, instead of, I don't know, selling to lots of different locations, or trying to build Latvia as a home market. We decided, like, it will be hard to get a substantial volume in Latvia. Let's just move to London, and let's start selling there as on the day one. And even though for our company there was no connection with London before, it was literally because we speak in English and I don't speak German, so I decided London is the location. There is no other difference. Otherwise, if I would be speaking German, I would have moved to, I don't know, to Berlin, for example. So selling MVP, getting an MVP really narrow, and then selling MVP, I think is really important. And then the second thing I would do differently is I would just double down on staying under the radar. I think, again, what Ernest spoke about, there's lots of temptation to be out there in the industry. There's lots of temptation to be in the startup scene. There's lots of temptation to answer those emails that invites to events, it invites to speak, it invites to comments. But at the end of the day, those all are distractions and distractions. So there's only few things that matters at those early stages. And especially now, I look on that startup early stage development as like, for each and every stage, you have to choose what's your one single goal as a company to achieve. And I speak with my colleagues about this a lot. Like, what's the one KPI we definitely have to hit? And then and that's the point where you can be really dreamy. Like, what is the really thing we have to hit? And then once you have defined that thing, is to really write it down as a KPI and give it timeline, and whatever it takes, hit it, or like there's no chance to miss it. For example, on fundraising, we definitely didn't know what are the market KPIs for like Series A, what are the actual revenue requirements, what are the monthly growth rates, but that information is out there, and you have to be really diligent in learning what are the market KPIs and how you will be judged. So if you want to fundraise, or what are the KPIs, how clients wants to see your product, what is the single one thing that has to be in that MVP. So just double down on that on that target. So no startup events, no startup sodas, all that's fancy, really nice, lots of good beer. We haven't been too outspoken and too available to lots of these things, but I will just double down and cut everything out. And one example I can say is our website, for example, because we have a technologically really difficult product, I knew if we can execute it, like we can get it in the market. And since day one, we've been constantly sold out, and we have like a waiting list of clients. But our website, we still did it just like I think in 2 evenings at the initial stage, and we have spent like 200 euros. We are a company that's raised 2 million, but we have spent on our website maybe 200 euros. Why? Because like we generate inbounds from there, and we have been constantly sold out. So we don't need fancy site where people can go in and feel good about themselves. Like we need so our clients could go in there, read about the product, and sign up for the demo. And that conversion cycle is working really, really well. And we get inbounds. All our sales is coming through the inbounds. So like our website is not too fancy. Everybody who will look on it, they'll not like, oh, they could do a better job. But like, even though it's cringy to watch sometimes, but like it works. So and we don't need it at this stage to make it fancier. So that's just the one additional example on how just to double down on the things that are important, and not to care about stuff that just like doesn't deliver value, because it's so easy to get distracted. So yeah, that's more or less. I think I'm 16 minutes. Sorry, 1 minute too long.
All right.